we start to feel that connection to all of the scales. But how do we get that feeling of that connection? Just a little side note on philosophy. We get that feeling of connection not by trying to connect with infinitely big. People say, I can't visualize that. Well, that's because your senses are fairly limited. But you have the infinitely small within you. So through that direction, you can connect to infinity. This is why most of the masters that have walked the earth have said, go within. The kingdom of heaven is within. The Buddha is within everything. The Bindu point is within everything. And it's your connection to all knowledge. Right? Right. Oh. You're all going, oh man, you mean I've got to sit in like some pretzel position every morning and like, oh. No pretzel necessary. You can do this sitting down anywhere, or standing up if you want to. You have access to senses towards the infinitely small. Because you contain it. But when I wrote these equations, there was an issue. One of it was like, okay, if everything is different scales black holes, when I presented that to physicists, I got my butt kicked pretty hard. Typically kicked out of physics conference. Why? Because, I've got an atom in there that I'm saying is a black hole. Is the atom really a black hole? And that brings us to that paper I just published that's so controversial. And I assure you, I'm still dodging plenty of tomatoes and rotten eggs. Right? That paper is called a Schwarzschild proton, and it's kind of a bombshell. In very simple mechanical equations that I'm going to show you right now, I prove that the atom is a mini black hole. And how did I do that? Well, I looked at it this way. I said, I'm not going to do like everybody else and ignore the density of the vacuum. Okay? I'm not going to ignore the most intense, the most energetic, probably the source of everything, thing that we found in physics. So I said, inside a proton volume, right? The proton is like, let's say you have a simple hydrogen atom, you have a little proton, is the nucleus of the atom. It's very, very tiny in the middle. I said, inside there, how much volume is there? And so I calculated the volume of a proton. It's 10 to minus 39. Depending on which radius you take, it's an approximation. 10 to the minus 39 centimeter cube. And I said, how much of this energy that's in the vacuum is still present inside the teeny weeny beady proton? And I made the calculation, which is pretty straightforward. And the result is 10 to the 55th grams within a proton volume. There's still 10 to the 55th grams inside the volume of a proton. Where did we see that number? The mass of the universe. The mass of the universe. Now remember our assumption, remember our statement? The vacuum connects all things. If that was true, that would mean that you'd expect all the information of every proton in our universe to be present in each one of them. And that's exactly how the math came out. Isn't that cool? This is actually the mathematical evidence, I'll call it for now, that everything is one. Alright? Now, no longer just a concept, no longer a dogma, now it's a mathematical, physical evidence. Like that? Yeah, right on. I thought that was cool. I didn't mention it in that paper. I didn't talk about oneness, you know. Don't want to be too obvious in those papers. I said, oh, you know, this number is evidence that all protons are entangled. Right? You know? If you use physics terms, then they'll listen. And so, this is all nice, you know, this 10 to the 55th gram per proton volume. Remember, 10 to the 55th gram is enough to make the whole universe a black hole. So obviously, if I take all of that as the mass of the unit of the proton, no doubt the atom is a black hole. But actually, how much of that do I need to take? Very little. In fact, if I only use 10 to the minus 39%, a very teeny, weeny, beady little amount of 10 to the 55th grams of energy, the proton becomes a black hole. The atom is a black hole. And so in this paper, in some ways, you could say that I'm saying that the vacuum is feeding all atoms. That the material world is basically 10 to the minus 39% of the energy of the vacuum. It's just a little beady weedy leak, teeny weeny leak of the vacuum. And it makes up the material world. You all followed this?